Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Monday in the Riv. Another exciting day in the Riv. And I guess the first thing we did talk about that shooting on Hafford Street in the OD on 1200 block of South Main,
Right.
and they were doing CPR. And as usual, there are no follow up news. Without Facebook and stuff, we'd get no news. Isn't it amazing that you never have? This is like mainstream media refusing to cover Hunter Biden, and no matter what they say, they had one of his business partners again say that they did speak. That Biden was in the room. They've got a bank out. And I saw it today. There was zero coverage, not
Right.
one word about that testimony on NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC. They will not talk about it. It's remember, as we heard live in the city council chamber, shut your mouth, don't say anything, and they'll forget about it. Well, they'll never know about it. Our media is it's incredible. All they do is write fluff pieces. I did get a little bit of information. I just got it in, and from a very reliable source that we have had over 50 shootings in Fall River this year.
I believe
That's
that.
that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
That's
I
quite a
believe
bit.
that.
Yeah, and I think I'm looking at the old records. I think they used to have maybe five, under maybe 10, under 10, 50 already. And we're basically just halfway through the year. And that's the reported shootings. So
We don't we
we've
don't
got
have to
to,
worry about it. We don't have to worry
yeah,
about it. There's not bullets in every house. There are no
that,
shootings in Fall River.
well, yeah, that is one way to look at it. If there's no bullet in your house, well, who cares? And
Right.
but you shouldn't have that attitude if you happen to be the mayor of this city.
Right. Right.
Because you notice that anytime there's any kind of crime, it's major news, like in New Bedford, in Providence. This morning, I was watching local news, and they were reporting about a where they were on a triple homicide that had taken place. I guess one of the individuals, that one of the individuals, I guess they found somebody. I guess they got a suspect or something, and then there was another shooting or a stabbing in Providence, of course, with the nightclubs and everything else up there. Providence is a pretty, in certain areas it's pretty dangerous because they, that attracts people from everywhere to these nightclubs and strip joints and stuff like that. And you get some of these people lick it up today, and you never know what's going to happen. But
Right.
the point is that they report it. They actually report it. And then if you report, see, you can't report it in Fall River because if you reported it, people would begin to ask, why aren't you doing anything about it?
That's right. That's right.
Therein lies
And we know that local media is kowtowing to Paul and doing what Paul wants, because if they didn't, Paul would tear them a new one, because Paul doesn't like anyone opposing him. Okay? And they want to keep this failure of a mayor in office. And that is why we have this problem,
yeah.
because nobody wants to hold this man accountable. 50 shootings and not a word. Not a word. Not a plan. Nothing. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. Totally
No,
unacceptable.
bullet holes. We have pictures of bullet holes in cars, bullet holes in houses. Not a word. It's like, hey, who cares? I mean, we had Russia and China having a joint exercise off the coast of Alaska, a provocative move. I don't know if the mainstream media will cover it, but that's the key. The key is, like you said, you don't talk about it. It doesn't. It's like, what does the media cover? They put a picture of Paulie down there with the lieutenant governor, and then I heard somebody said something like, "Oh, well, I saw a picture of him down there with the lieutenant governor. I said, you saw a picture of him down there at the lieutenant governor in front of a dirt pile with some heavy equipment and a whole bunch of promises. But what has that done for the crime, for the underperforming educational system, for your quality of life in Fall River? That's not going to change anything. And even Mike Roderick ultimately had to make that admission. This
Right.
is not going to be the cure of all Fall River's problems. Fall River has a lot of problems, and one of them, and the biggest one, is lack of accountability. You have to hold your public officials accountable. It should not be Spindle City Straight Talk and Facebook reporting shootings and crimes. We should know this. We still haven't seen anything on the police department. We've seen the lawsuits. We've seen the issues. We saw the drugs mishandled. We saw all this. This has gone on for his entire tenure as mayor, and absolutely nothing has been said about what we're going to do to fix the police department. We got a new chief, an appointed chief. What are they going to do? Outside entity like Cranston did? Absolutely not. Is there a plan? Nobody knows about it. If there's a plan, that's like the old, you remember that old philosophical question they used to ask: if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a noise? If there's no one there to hear it, did it really make a noise? So our question to ponder in Fall River: if they don't talk about it, did crime not really happen? Well, I got the answer to that one. No, it did happen, and they don't want to report on it. But they're hoping people, unless they're living in the absolute proximity of the neighborhood. I'm sure if you go to Happett Street in the Flint, where the last shooting occurred, and ask them if they feel real safe, I think they'll have a quite different answer.
But remember, Paul has his own agenda up there because he had to close a food bank in the Flint because it wasn't necessary. In the poorest, one of the poorest parts of the city, didn't require it at all. Did not require it at all. So we're going to close the food bank. Thank you, Paul. I'm sure there are a lot of people who depended on that food bank that are starving today because of you. And you have something to be proud of. You should put that on your campaign. Put that on one of your campaign signs. Vote Paul Coogan, closing all the food banks.
And don't forget, getting rid of their tents too.
That's right.
But wait a minute. It's an election year. They'll throw money at everybody. Throw more money at them. They declare them a disaster area. From the federal level right down to the local level, that's the way they get votes. No more chow mein sandwiches. It's money. Throw some more money down there. Give this guy who never spends money for the benefit of the people of Fall River, whether it's the millions of dollars of ARPA money or not, give him some more money to blow on his friends. So, that's the key. But on a good note, I did finally get to the St. Anthony Desert Maharajan yesterday, and I got some good food, and I actually ran into somebody that I haven't seen since high school. Another guy who left Fall River. Left Fall River to become a professional musician in New York. He's a pilot. He was actually a flight instructor. We had a nice long conversation. He's sitting with one of my cousins, but to show you, he left Fall River because he had to make a living, and he left Fall River. He did well. Now he's come back to the area because, he has friends here. He grew up here. His family had a business in Fall River. But where does he live? Not Fall River. He lives in Westport. But it was good seeing him. So, I think the church did pretty well on that on that Maharajan, and it was really, really good. As a matter of fact, he is in charge. He was in charge of the entertainment. They put him in charge because he spent a career as a professional musician. So it was a good time. If you didn't go, you missed something. Next year, try to make it there. It'll be even better because he's back and he's going to play next year with a few of the other people that couldn't play this year. They're very good. So it was a nice thing to see. People get together, and it's a positive about. See, the people of Fall River are good people. Paul may not like the Flint, but St. Anthony the Desert serves the entire Lebanese community because it's the only Maronite church in the city, obviously. But to see people, regular people from all levels of life at a place like that, sharing food, listening to music and stuff. It's always reassuring. It reinstills my faith that Fall River does have good people. Now, all those good people have to do is get to the damn polls and throw these rubber stamps out.
I'm reading a comment from one of our viewers who he didn't make it on Facebook. He made it on YouTube. And I've got to read this to you. He goes, it's Mr. X again. Thank you, Mr. X. This place is a violent crime scene within itself. Duck your heads whenever you go out. Absolutely a disgrace. And and people believe that. People are having a problem with living in Fall River. And some of these events, like the Maharajan, bring the community together.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about some of the violent things that happen, like the fights, like the arguments. And I'm not saying those happened at St. Anthony the Desert, but I'm saying a lot of times we see at these feasts, arguments, fights. We haven't seen any shootings yet, knock on wood, thank God. But we've got another big event coming up that we have every year, which is the Liberal Club Holy Ghost Feast.
Yep.
And you and I have been to that. We've seen
Yep.
it. It's a very well thought out, very well represented feast, and everyone tends to get there. Even though parking is very difficult to find, people go, and that wraps up the summer for Fall River for most people. So we'll see what happens, but I look forward to that.
Well, Mr. X is right, because that's the perception. See, Paul doesn't have that perception because he doesn't really live in the neighborhoods. He's got his little Barbie townhouse, and there's no bullet holes in his. But walk the Flint, walk some of the areas in around Corky Road, walk the areas down in the South End, some of the South End neighborhoods. Crime is a reality in Fall River. We were number one for a couple of years. Somebody now said we're number two. I'm going to have to check that stat again in the state. But listen, denial. Our politicians are always in a total state of denial. Like Biden wasn't. He was on the phone call. He was on a phone call with his son 20 times, but they were talking about the weather. How absurd is that? Oh, they didn't talk anything about business. They got offshore accounts, but they won't release that. They're suppressing everything. They won't report. But the people know. People don't feel safe. The person who sent that text about the Hafford Street heard gunshots in her home. How do you think she feels? It's like, am I going to walk outside? Gunshots ringing out around, but don't worry, Paul, just as he normally is, totally dismissive and oblivious to the reality of the regular people in Fall River. Don't. There's not bullet holes in every house. Is that your criteria, Paul? Really? Is that what you're going to use to say we've got to do something about crime when we have a bullet hole in every house? I don't know. But that'll never happen because in the North End, if there starts getting bullet holes in the North End where all your rich friends live, your doctor friends, your lawyer friends, your business friends, your developer friends, your banker friends. A lot of them live out of town too. But there's going to be no bullet holes in their houses. Because as soon as the first bullet hits there, you're going to end up calling in the National Guard for the North End. You'll be like Pelosi when they got near her house, calling the entire San Francisco PD and the National Guard to protect me. The regular people, screw them. We don't care. Move out. You don't like the crime, move out. Well,
move to Russia. Move to Russia.
Russia, move out of town.
Right.
We've heard it all. But,
Yeah.
it's the dismissive nature, because that's the thing that really disturbs me. I mean, look, he's not even a good enough politician to pretend. And you and I have seen it a lot, CJ. We've seen the politicians who are really good at it. Oh, I'm going to get a committee, a study. We're going to do a study. We're going to bring in a study committee. I'm going to hire an expert to come in and look at and nothing ever gets done. But, they pretend they're actually going to do something and they do nothing. But at least they're pretending to do something by acknowledging the fact that whatever the people of Fall River are suffering is a reality. Not this guy. He thinks he's still wandering around the halls of Durfee with his hands in his pocket, high-fiving the kids instead of educating them.
And maybe that's why we have one of the poorest performing school systems in the state. Speaking of education, did you notice that there is a question that's been proposed for the ballot to do away with the MCAS? Fall River would love that because they can't sustain the MCAS for these students. That's for sure. But the Attorney General is looking at the legality of such a question. Hey, it's a ballot question. The people don't want MCAS, they don't want MCAS. Let the voters decide. But when the voters decided that they wanted term limits, the House and the Senate said, no, we can't do that. And they got the Women's Voter League to fight for them in court. And that was wrong. What they should have done when they said you have to have a constitutional amendment for that was the House and the Senate should have presented a possibility of having a constitutional conference, a constitutional convention, to place that item on the ballot. The people wanted it. That should be on the ballot. But no, your state representatives and your city and your senators do not represent you. They represent themselves. Because God forbid you limit their terms in office. God forbid. You never know what would happen. Mike Rodrigues wouldn't be on the Ways and Means Committee, and he'd be out of office already if we had term limits.
So, a long time ago. No, you're right.
Exactly.
But remember, they also sat on the rent control issue. They sit on everything because the only thing they want two things: to stay in office forever and stick their head in the trough and get all their friends jobs and get rich and make all their friends rich. They respond only to the rich donors. That's who they respond to, and we all know it. Listen, this is BS at its highest degree. We know, as a matter of fact, you're talking about that. I just saw something earlier because I do get up early with the dog, and I was watching TV, and I watch national and local TV. I try to get a little bit of what's going on in the world every day. And actually, it's ironic we're talking about education. Missouri, which is one of the lowest performing states, it's either the lowest or the second lowest in educational performance. You know what their answer is? Going to a 4-day school week, eliminating another day, and eliminating testing. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Send kids to school. Do not test the fact to see if they actually are learning anything, because then somebody might hold you accountable for not teaching them. That's why this is a big scam. This is like they can keep asking for pay raises and sending out kids like they did in Baltimore with high school diplomas that were reading at a third grade level. That's right, I said third grade. I think there were a few at the second grade, third grade, eighth grade. There was virtually 75% were reading below high school level, and they were graduating from high school. And what was their cure to that problem? Well, we can't not let them graduate, even though they're functional illiterates and they'll never be able to get a job. We don't care what they do as adults. We don't care the fact that they can't ever get a decent job because they basically can't read and write. So they're either going to be criminals, pimps, or on welfare. But we don't care because we don't want to hurt their feelings. We're getting hundreds of millions of dollars to run the educational system in Baltimore. And we're trying to do things so we don't have to educate them and still get paid. And that's exactly what's happening in all these states. They want to eliminate testing. Hey, listen, I don't have any problem with revamping testing, looking with if it is a true and accurate test. And if it's not, come up with another one. But you're not going to tell me that you shouldn't test people. That's like having somebody, and you'll know this because you're a healthcare professional, CJ. That's like telling somebody with a family history of heart disease or prostate cancer, never get a prostate test and never go have your cardiac system checked. Never go on a treadmill, never go to your doctor, never check your cholesterol level. Just spitball it, people. Don't worry about it. Nothing's going to happen except you're going to die. Testing? Why would we test school children? Duh, I don't know. Maybe to see if they're learning. But then if they're not learning, who would be to blame? The educational system. That's why our public educational system is a disaster. We're not anywhere near the top in anything. Math, reading comprehension. There are third world countries ahead of the United States in some educational areas. Why? Because they've got too powerful a lobby and they get to do anything they want and nobody really cares about the kids who don't get educated because the rich kids always get educated. The rich kids always get educated. I remember back in the old days when Teddy Kennedy was against school busing and integration in Boston. And where did his kids go to school? Private school. So nobody, this is a big con. Yeah, we want to do this for what? And I think Missouri said, well, there's a shortage of teachers. Well, why is there a shortage of teachers in Missouri? Number one, they've got one of the lowest pay scales in the country, and the school system stinks. Maybe fix the system, not penalize the kids, but never happened. Yeah. Never happened.
The problem in Massachusetts is when a school system fails or is failing, they throw money at it, thinking money's going to fix the problem. And all money does is give pay raises to the politically connected. The political ass kissers keep getting more money.
Yeah.
And that's unacceptable because they're depriving our children of education. Okay? And when you look at look at what people are screaming about now at college admissions at Harvard, at Yale, that they're granting admission to too many Asians, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, because they can perform better in math and sciences. That's because their parents stay on top of them to learn. Education is vital to that community. Unlike our community, a lot of our communities, which education is a second thought. And that's why we don't have the performance that other countries have. Look at Germany. Look at China. Look at Japan. Okay? We have nothing to compare to them. That's why we're worried about the Chinese hacking up our computer system, because we don't have a secure enough system in place in the United States, because we can't create it, because the Chinese have created one. And they've created how to break the ones that we have. So this is what we get. We get what we deserve, and what we deserve is nothing because we do nothing.
Yeah, you hate to say it, but why do the Oriental cultures normally do very well in college? Because culturally they're different than us. We see a lack of respect for people in general, and even for parents and grandparents and stuff with this in the United States. It's like disrespectful. They don't respect people's property. They think that it's okay to loot and destroy property because they're not happy. It's a cultural decline of this country and Western civilization, but especially in this country. The Oriental cultures are extremely respectful of their elders and their ancestors. It's part of their culture. They respect their ancestors
Agreed.
always.
Agreed.
And because of that, when they're told to do their homework, they do it. I mean, I I like all Oriental food, but I mean, I really love Japanese and then Chinese, and I at least eat Chinese at least once a week. And
And you're
when I
not
go in
talking about
there,
a Tommy sandwich.
yeah, yeah, but I get different things. But I'll tell you what, I go to a little place sometimes on the corner of Brayton Avenue, and I've been going there for years. They've changed ownership, and I go to them all basically, but I remember when I went there for years when I was on a job. They had two kids. I saw them grow up. They were sitting in the restaurant, helping when they could, but doing their homework. Then the two daughters, one was a chemistry major, the other one was a physics major. They went to college, and they were in there. And when they weren't working, they were doing homework. It's cultural. The parents pay attention to the kids. The kids respect the parents, and it is like that. And if you look at it, it's about that, because look at who are the kids that get educated the most? It's the kids from wealthy families who have education as a priority, and it's two halves. One half is go there just to party, like that movie actress there, Laurie, whatever her last name is. There, they sent their kids to college, and when they interviewed the kids, they said, "Oh, we just want to go there to like party and drink and get the college experience." They didn't need a job; they're loaded. But there were other people who say, "Listen, parents are educated; they want their kids to go and become educated." My daughter's best friend is a professor at UConn, and her husband is a professor at Worcester Polytech. Obviously, both of them have PhDs. Obviously, education is an important part of their life. Both of their kids are both now in college and doing well because education is a priority. That's why education is so important, to educate the poorer kids. They don't have that advantage at home. It's up to the educational system to cultivate this kid. There's a lot of bright kids from families that do not have the support at home. That's why they created the public education system, and it's a failure. And it's been failing for the last 50 years, and it's right now, it's on its last breath. If they didn't have the power they did, they would public education would have been gone a long time ago, and we would be to the charter school and private school networks.
And we should have them because they're very good performing systems.
They are.
We got a couple of comments. Jeff Gaudreau says, and he says, "Hello guys, I can't be on Facebook at this point, but I just want to clarify to the last comment. This season has been very weak when it comes to events and performances. Why hasn't he done anything for the Flint?" That's from Jeff. Mr. X says, "The fact that Coogan has been involved in the school department for so many years and literally accomplished nothing, with him not ever advancing to the principal's position, speaks for itself." Well, we've said that numerous times here on the show. He's never made principal. He's never made a true leadership position.
Listen, we know one thing about Paul Coogan. He couldn't lead a one-man parade.
Right. And I have a comment from last week's show that I wanted to bring up from Jared on TV. Why would market rate housing push the poor out of Fall River? Those apartments are meant for the rich. The poor will still have the triple-decker apartments in the middle of the city. Why are those apartments going up? Can't be because of the market rate. The rich want the luxury apartments and the life. And the third floor is on Dwelly Street.
Please,
not for them.
Stop, CJ. Please stop it. My brain is hurting.
I
don't know how anybody could ask that question, because we know it's pretty damn simple. It's pretty damn simple. You had these developers come in and buy houses that used to go for $280,000, $250,000 for $500,000.
Correct.
And then they renovated them, and they're charging $2,000. So the poor people who lived in them are out. It makes it's simple economics. Now the people in those apartments can charge more money because now it's supply and demand. Now we have the supply. They're going to go up. Their taxes are going up. Everything's going up. And the reality is, it's a proven fact. That's why when we looked at the TIFs, remember the reports we brought out so many years ago to Columbia, that TIFs have a negative impact on economy? And everybody, look, there's 1,000 articles, pal. Go read why market rate housing drives up rents. Fall River's rents have escalated so much, probably greater than any other city in history, because of what's just happened in the last few years. Because remember, only a few short years ago, the rents in Fall River were like $800 as max. Now you're looking at $2,000 for some studio apartments, and there's not enough rich people to take those apartments. So let me clue you in. I'm a betting man. I'll bet you that they will go. A lot of these places will go unoccupied. You will have ultimately those businesses, those rich developers will just move on to the next city. It's happened before in Fall River. Maybe you're not old enough to remember. But we had market rate housing on Rodman Street where the Stop and Shop is. We had a whole bunch of them. We had 3 or 4 or 5 city blocks full of these units. And we had them in the North End. And guess what happened to them? Not enough rich people moved to Fall River, #1 in crime, worst educational system. They're going to go unoccupied. Ultimately, they're abandoned. And then we had to go to fires for like 10 straight years, every single night at those places, until they were burnt so badly they required them to be razed and destroyed. Look at what happened in Detroit. High crime, bad education, all these factors, you're trying to, it's only the rich people. Only rich people will go there, so you don't need them. You still got 3 deckers. Well, guess what? I'll tell you what. Are you dumb enough to sell me your car for $3? You got 500 people bidding for your car, and you're already up to about $25,000 for your car? Hey, look, I'm poor. I'm on a fixed income. Give me the car for $10. That's not the way it works. I can't believe you actually asked that question.
Well, Jared's usually pretty good on his statements. I really appreciate his viewership, and we can't fault our viewers for their opinions. So,
well, sometimes their opinions are based in their political leaning, and that's not objective. Do some economic studies. Read some studies about look what's happened in Boston. Not any rent control in Boston. Everywhere these people go, they leave a trail of escalating rent everywhere, because that's just the way it works.
Right.
Supply and demand. It's simple capitalism, and it's what the market will bear. And that's it. And the market, Fall River has now a market that the average people in Fall River cannot bear. It's that simple. It's not rocket science. It's simple.
I agree totally. Well, I want to thank you all for watching. And remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Wednesday. Have a great day.